All right. And we are recording. Hey, this is Dr. Luke. Although for today, I am Merlin because we have a King Arthur themed podcast today from Northern India. I suppose we have King Arthur or Ostick. And below me, we have the lovely producer Jordan or Queen Guinevere. Welcome, guys.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Glad to
This
be
is
here.
It's a little freaky. Look at myself in on the camera here. I'm like seeing into the future. I've become a wizard a little bit, I think.
I think
Where's
that's
your
true.
orb?
Yeah.
Where's your orb?
Yeah. Oh, I
Are you
forgot my
pondering the
orb.
orb?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot my orb.
There's one on the table behind you, but it
Yeah.
might be a little heavy.
Well, I think they get the point. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're going to be talking about chapter 32 from the abridged version of Sir James G. Frazer's The Golden Bough. We're going to be talking about the ritual of Adonis. I had more planned. I was going to try to talk about chapter 33 as well, the Gardens of Adonis. And I realized this is just too rich. I think so much of what we're interested in from an archetypal psychohistory perspective, especially JFK, is relevant to these sections. So I argued that, I got to about Thursday. I was like, we need to take this slower. And that will become more obvious as we go through some of the images here on the title slide. So if you're not familiar with how we do things here, we talk about the Golden Bough, and then I also talk about some of the research that I have that's relevant to this book that I'm working on the archetypal psychohistory of the United States space program, which has expanded to cover the Trinity test all the way up to the Artemis missions. It used to be just confined to the Apollo space program, and it is crept into everything to truly understand it because they're all interlocking mythologisms, as far as I can tell. So some of the things we're going to be talking about today, the biggest thing that we're going to talk about roses and flowers for like 80% of this presentation, and the meaning of it, the relevance to mythological figures. This is an element of the Adonis story that just really jumped out at me. And when I saw it, so much of the Kennedy life arc snapped into place. I mean, you probably already contemplated. We've talked about this before in terms of the divine conjunction between celestial and between lunar and solar principles when we were looking at the roses that Jackie was holding in the limo in Dallas and how this might be important into Rosicrucian mysteries. And it still is. It is a symbol of initiation, but it's so much deeper than that, especially with regards to Adonis. We're going to look at that deeper and how it may correspond to a particular stage in the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone. We're going to also look at other elements of vegetation that parallel what I've been talking about in regards to the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, which is the blue marble and the ecology movement. Running tandem to that was the flower power movement with hippies responding to the Vietnam War. And this largely got started via the suggestion of Allen Ginsberg. So I think that's important how these movements, the space program and flower power, intermingle to create the modern Gaia hypothesis and ecology movement. And we're going to be looking a little bit, we've talked about this last week, how Marilyn Monroe and Jackie are sort of two sides of the same coin relating to mother goddess figures. And specifically with Marilyn Monroe, I want to look at her time working in a drone factory before she became the Marilyn Monroe, when she was Norma Jean Mortensen, and how that has some uncanny synchronicities with the life arc of Aphrodite. And then last week, I don't know if we'll get to it today, I want to talk about playing golf on the moon, potentially connecting to a vegetal ritual, and the connections between Where's Waldo and the Grateful Dead, which I don't have this in the presentation, but I was thinking about it just now. A lot of the Grateful Dead iconography features skeletons with roses. And that's going to be important because roses are a symbol of immortality and resurrection. If you've already called to mind the rosy cross of the philosophers and what that may mean, you can start to understand how those things work together. And this is particularly interesting when you start to think about the connections that a band like the Grateful Dead may have to the, Laurel Canyon, CIA, etc. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And you missed the obvious metaphor for Guns and Roses here. You could have brought
Oh
with
yeah,
AI.
yeah, I did, didn't I?
Yes, a lot of bands
It,
from that period.
yeah. What is this mixture? Why are Death and Roses getting mixed together? I think of the album cover for Appetite for Destruction, and so
Mm.
now you've got me wondering whether or not that carries Rosicrucian themes in it.
Yeah, I mean the poster for Barry Lyndon. What was it? It was Barry
Oh
holding a
yeah,
gun and him stepping on a
Mm.
rose. I mean, it was
that's
about
right.
love, that movie.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
that's sure. That's a good
I've
thing.
never thought so much about roses or learned so much about roses as they relate to the Kennedy administration. And eh, what we found, and Jordan did more research on this than me. We have a personal connection to this in the hometown that we are in. We don't so it's global, but it's very personal. It's very local as well.
Yeah,
Perhaps that's true for all of these symbols. The fractal can get very personal
It can,
and it can fractal out to be a larger cultural movement or narrative.
it can. Well, let's get into it because there's really so much to cover. I have like 21 slides. And
Mhm.
really the second slide is preparatory. It's not really going to require too much commentary, but if you could slide to that, Jordan.
You know what 21 is, yeah?
Blackjack.
That's right.
That's right. I hadn't planned that. This morning when I was reviewing my notes, I added one at the last minute, so it wasn't really intentional, but now it makes sense. There are, I mean, I didn't go deep into the stacks trying to find images that connect to the rituals of Adonis, but this seems to be one of the more famous ones. John Reinhard Vigeland's The Gardens of Adonis. And here we see, and we're going to talk about this, but we see lamenting women throwing vegetation into the ocean while there are flutes being played. And this is a big part of the rituals of Adonis. Um, and I just thought this was a wonderful painting. I don't really have much to say about it besides this. Um, I have to say, doing the study of the Golden Bough has made so many different works of art just pop in a way that they wouldn't have before. It makes me want to become an art collector.
Yes, because in a way, you're just collecting all the stories and all the myths, not just the art itself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really adds to. It makes you wonder, like, why people had so much art in their homes. Like, I mean, if I saw this in somebody's home, like, we could have hours long conversations about it just based off of this image. It really provokes such intellectual stimulation just looking at it. It's more than a pretty picture.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, even with these painters, I don't think the general public was aware of all the stories that were being played out. I mean, I'm hoping it's true, but it could be some sort of a secret communication between those in the know and those like people who could really appreciate like what's the imagery really portraying. I don't think 17th century. Where is this painting from? Maybe
I think
it
it's from the
looks like
19th
18th.
century.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't think a lot of people would be like laymen would be aware of what's going on, what's the story about it, and like what's the significance. But I think people in the know there, they would have very strong reactions to this. I'm just picturing like we like to think that okay, I'm just like we're closer to them as like we were once lame people, now we know. It's like that. We have transitioned into that sort of a milieu through our study of the Golden Bough. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I think where they were getting a lot, and I'm going to have Jordan read a lot today because I want her to kind of steep us in some of the primary sources where a lot of these paintings were coming from. It's my understanding, and I'm not some expert on this, that there isn't like amazing archaeological evidence for the stuff that Fraser is talking about. There is some. There is. It's kind of scant. Like there, and what's interesting going into the Golden Bough stuff and doing research is like even sometimes the archaeologists get things wrong. Like for instance, like many images of Apollo and Adonis were conflated. You know, I found that out by looking at the symbolism of Orion and Artemis. But so many of those early images for a long time, people conflated those. So there's really a lot of imprecision in archaeology. Like, you know, when you're looking at something and you're not an expert, you're just kind of assume they figured it all out. fact of the matter is it's pretty messy. It's pretty dynamic, and not everybody agrees with one another, like about what they're looking at. And I think that's a great lesson in humility that we just don't automatically defer to experts when their fields are not exact sciences and really subject to revision. So a lot of the stories of Adonis and these Adonis rituals come from like Ovid and Theocritus and other classic writers. It's not so much the archaeological evidence is like, boom, here it is. This is exactly what happened.
Even the hard sciences have
Yeah,
a lot of these methodological problems.
hard science. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's my skepticism of all that has been rather well documented here. But I think that's where these painters were drawing their inspiration from. It's not like they were looking at indexes of findings and from archaeological digs. I think they were drawing primarily from the classic texts.
Well, then you can zoom that forward too when we're looking at Kubrick, the magician class of America. I don't know what else to say.
Mm,
It's probably the case in some instances, just like what you're saying here. They're drawing upon the Frazer. They're maybe drawing upon Jung or even Freud. They're not all drawing from the source. So I think you see a similar phenomena ricocheting into the present.
Yeah, something else that will become obvious as we proceed through this conversation about Adonis is that, there's not, there's how the canon of these stories gets decided is an interesting study in and of itself. I think a lot of people want to rag on the Bible because there's some details that may differ between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Oh, were there two Marys, three Marys? Were they there at this moment or that moment, or how many people saw this or that? And they're rather inconsequential compared to, like, say, the story of Adonis. Like, we're going to look at the pig or the boar that killed Adonis, according to the story, right? He dies by being gored by a boar. There are like at least 5 different interpretations about where the boar came from and who sent it. Last time we talked about Apollo sending it, right? Um, but that's not the only one, and that was a big revelation. And we've talked about pigs in JFK. We looked at it from a Christic perspective, right? We're talking about like the famous story of Christ throwing the demons into the herd of pigs when he encountered the demoniac. Well, we've got a pig again here, and of course that's going to connect to the Bay of Pigs, in my opinion. But we'll get to that eventually. So if we can, let's start with the first slide from the Frazer, and I'm going to just read a little paragraph.
I love that in your personal notes here, it says, read and dwell on the roses.
Right, and we will. So let me just read this, and we'll get to that. So the Adonis ritual follows a remarkably consistent structure across the Mediterranean world. It begins with a sacred union in abundance, marked by images of Aphrodite and Adonis displayed among fruits, flowers, and gardens, symbolizing life at its peak. This is followed by sudden ritual death, expressed through women's intense lamentation and the carrying of corpse-like effigies to burial and water, often the sea or a spring, representing the god's violent loss and descent. The rites then move towards symbolic transformation as Adonis's blood becomes visible in nature through red rivers, anemones, or roses, linking death directly to renewed fertility. In some regions, the ceremony concludes with revival or ascent, affirming that the god's disappearance is temporary and that life will return. Taken together, the ritual forms a compressed drama of vegetation itself, moving from flowering fullness to destruction and finally to regeneration. So this is not a radical departure from the things that we've talked about before. It's been building for weeks now. I think a couple weeks ago we talked about how this is a ritual that's present in India, and Ostic wasn't there for that, but he did find the images. I forget the names of the individuals that the idols that were destroyed or made into clay figurines and marriages. Perhaps you can remind me. But we looked at different Slavic communities where they perform the carrying out the death ritual. And clearly now we've got this showing up in the Mediterranean, that this is a universal thing that is going on wherever you are. Um, as far as the Adonis ritual goes, in a detail that I perhaps overlooked when setting the stage for the conversation about this, I'll see if I can recall it correctly. The story goes, when Adonis does get gored by the boar and he does die and he's bleeding out, is that Aphrodite, his divine consort, is races to catch him before he passes away, and either through cutting herself, like running through a rose field and cutting herself on the thorns, or the blood of Adonis himself, the tears and the blood of both figures come together, and ultimately what happens is this transformation of Adonis into a rose or into anemones. The I think earlier in this material, the emphasis was on anemones, but it caught my eye when it was talking about roses, and I couldn't help but think, oh my gosh, like what's going on with roses? I mean, we've looked at, like I said earlier, the roses that Jackie held in the limo that got blood all over them. And I was like, this is the Adonis story. She's an aspect of Aphrodite, or the mother goddess. There's blood all over the roses. This is almost a perfect parallel with the Adonis Aphrodite story. Then there's the rose garden. One of the first orders of business that JFK did was to commission a rose garden that was designed by a woman named Bunny Mellon. And then also his mother is named Rose. So we're going to look at that here in a second. But before we go on, I'll get some input from Ostic and Jordan. We're going to look at roses. So let's save the rose conversations for those slides, but I'm just prepping everybody.
Are we talking about the rose garden later
Yeah,
and
like the
cutting
next
out?
slide.
Okay,
Like the next slide.
perfect.
Ostic, do you remember what the was? I can look back at my notes, but do you
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
the Indian figures? Who were they? Just to remind me.
They are Shiv and Parvati. So,
Ah, yes. So
so
they're like your Adonis and Aphrodite.
I mean, there are a lot of parallels that could be drawn to Adonis and Aphrodite. But yeah,
Yeah,
they're one of the couples. Like they're,
yeah. Oh, well, you know
but
what? I think I have something about that on the next slide. By the way, this is Tammuz and Inanna here. This is not Adonis and Aphrodite, but this is another iteration. And that I forgotten that the next slide I did, I had ChatGPT break, because I was getting confusing. I was like, because there's different places where there's Adonis and an Aphrodite figure in India, and so I actually broke that down. So maybe we can go to the next slide while Osik talks a little bit, and then I'll bring this back in. We can go to 661.
I mean, I'd like to talk about the Aphrodite thing. I think what
Sure,
Aphrodite is
please.
usually what it's called, that like literally it means the sea, the foam the sea forms when it hits the beaches.
Yes,
There's
yes.
so it the story says that the Aphrodite catches him. So it's like he falls into the sea. He falls on the beach. So, that's the metaphor I thought of it. That he is being swallowed by the water in that way. That she is the sea itself when Aphrodite catches him. And then now there's blood in the sea because he's been hit by the boar, and that blood is now being represented in the form of anemone, the sea anemone. And it's like that's what I thought about thinking about that. That's what I
Yeah,
wanted to say. Now, one more
yeah.
thing that has been brewing in my mind since the beginning of this presentation is that the Gore Vidal quote that you brought up many months ago, many moons ago. So that was
His name is Gore. That's interesting. Even his name seems relevant in the mix, but go on.
no, I mean that quote was spot on. Like when I first looked at it, I thought, okay, maybe he's like trying to, show off a bit. He's like, oh, it's Adonis. I didn't really connect with it. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
it's so because we were talking about Apollo and everything. I don't, he does not talk about Apollo. He does not hold any water. He does not know anything. Now, since we are on Adonis, he starts to make a bit more sense. That quote. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, producer Jordan. Ever efficient.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Jordan.
So yeah, that quote is so spot on. Like because he was writing it in '68 and he could see the resurrection of the king happening in real time. He could see, okay, Apollo program is going to happen in a few months. It's all over the news, and Apollo is actually connected. So he connected it to an even primitive myth than Apollo, and we were discussing. He connected it to Adonis. So that was interesting, and because Adonis even encapsulates the blood and the roses thing that you're talking about right now. So I'm pretty impressed by Gore Vidal's foresight there, and I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
you gotta
it's
have
kind of
read the Golden
amazing.
Bough.
Yeah, well, clearly he did. I talked about that, especially with his, I believe his play called Julian, where he references a lot of the Golden Bough. But it's what's kind of amazing to me is that Gore Vidal's kind of by himself doing that. You know, the educational system back then was such that many more people were familiar with the Golden Bough, many more people were familiar with Greek and Roman mythology, and yet there aren't as many individuals that applied that background to these world events. Um, Whereas you find individuals like ourselves who probably did not get nearly anywhere near that level of information from our traditional educational system who are making these connections. It's just interesting that, and we're having to become autodidacts in order to figure this out. Like I don't have training in the Golden Bough or Sir James Frazer. I've read a ton of books and I know how to analyze things, but I'm a philosopher by training. My dissertation's in Kierkegaard, not this. So, and I think that goes for you two as well. Like we've all had to become self-taught and figure these things out because in some way it seems like our intellectual elites and our education failed us.
To me, it feels like the people doing the teaching, parents, and this isn't a personal critique of anyone, but even a lot of the kids, we have forgotten in mass why these things matter at all. Because when we did it, the little we did do in grade school felt very, oh, why are we learning about the Greek gods? Why would we be learning about the Titans? It didn't feel, there was no connection to the world around us, which is very fascinating. Though, of course, there are certainly people who know why
Yeah.
it matters so deeply. And maybe they don't see things exactly the way you're emerging to see them, Luke, in that it's the simulation playing out through archetypes. Perhaps there's different meta theories about how it's happening, but certainly there is more of an awareness in some pockets of civilization that being read in on this symbolic language is a crucial part of being empowered
Yeah.
in today's world.
It really does make a strong case that everybody needs a strong classical education. In addition with a pinch of paranoia, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
Just
yeah,
another thing is
it's
that
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just that it's not palatable anymore. People don't like they don't as Jordan said, we are being forcefully is if it's not connected to our world, if it's not shown that it's important to us, then even if we're taught it, we'll forget it. It's like who cares? It's just syllabus. I'll get some grades or whatever. Then I'll forget it. It's taught that it's something removed from us. It's not a part of us. This history, these gods, and everything. Like people, even if they talk about these gods, they do not talk about the psychological things. And even in India, okay, in India, there has been a revival of teaching about all these, classical Indian texts and culture recently. Until the last 10 decade, there was people were all for Western everything. Oh, get rid of everyone is atheists and everything. But now there's been a revival. But even with that revival, people have to present that information in a way that sounds scientific. So it's like we do this ritual. Okay, this is the actual scientific reason that we did this. We were not fools. Like they had to present as a they had to present it in the current paradigm of what will not invite ridicule. They're trying to normalize themselves as real people, but they cannot actually say what they mean. So they have to present all their findings through the validation of science, seeking the validation of scientific theories and seeking the validation of practical necessities and everything. They cannot just straight out and say it. So there's this thing. I think this happens in America as well. People don't want to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I
Young
mean,
is the textbook example of this, as you read through what he wrote throughout his career, and we've talked about it before. Just a huge, I don't know if it's a watering down, but a translation of what seemingly was more a spiritual download into rational scientific frameworks and language. All of the frameworks make so much more sense once you start getting into the golden bough, and once you start getting into alchemy, it all clicks. I
Yeah.
think sometimes it seems really complex because, as you said, Ostic, it's overlaying the veneer of scientism onto something that i- doesn't even require rationalism to understand. And even if we're not studied in the classics, we are being programmed left and right all day, every day by this archetypal language in the
Yep.
media that we're getting blasted into our retinas.
Yep.
But we're not empowered necessarily as a culture to know what's even going on or be discerning about what we do and do not allow in, or even have the ability to critically think about it.
Yeah. I will say that a lot of the educational system has been geared towards utility, right? And it's not obvious that where a deep knowledge of Adonis and Tammuz and Aphrodite is going to be good for GDP or one's personal income. If anything, it's going to be a detraction because when you start figuring this stuff out, it becomes very disruptive. It's bad for bottom lines. I do want to say something about, I think this chart is helpful for us going forward. Like for an instance, like the Assyrian version of Adonis and Aphrodite is like Tammuz and Ishtar. And we're going to get to in future chapters when we talk about like Attis and Osiris, but Phrygian is Attis and Cybele, Egyptians Osiris and Isis. The thing that caught my mind in the next section, I want to tease right here because it's going to be a huge part and a big reason why I didn't want to go too deep into chapter 33 is that Frazer makes a point to talk about how Christ and Mary are Adonis and Aphrodite, and that this is perhaps most emblematic or perhaps best witnessed when we look at Michelangelo's famous sculpture, the La Pieta. Okay, and that is going to have reverberations and ramifications, especially we'll talk about it, but especially when we think about the imagery of Jackie cradling a wounded JFK in that limo in Dallas. So we'll explore that deeper next time, but I wanted to put that on the radar. But we can go to the next slide, Jordan, if you like.
Yeah, I would say naturally a masculine representation, or a masculine embodiment of Christ on earth. If this is truly a dualistic experience, surely there has to be a feminine, right? A
Right.
feminine polarity to it. And if we have an absence of that in our typical Christian lore, I'm not trying to be controversial or disrespectful in any way, but I'm just struggling with a better way to talk about it, to
That's
be
fine.
honest. If there's an absence of that, it makes sense that you would slot in the mother archetype to fill the role of Aphrodite. But to me, it seems there's maybe a more plausible, natural feminine polarity
Hmm.
for Christ.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We could talk about this stuff forever, and I know we have to be mindful of the time horizon here. Are we hemmed in by the 150 hard deadline, Jordan, today, or is it different?
Yes, every
Oh,
Sunday I
okay,
have my prayer group.
okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to be respectful of that. So, uh, I'm going to read a little something with this slide, and then we're going to talk about pigs, which I'm way too excited to do. All right. Adonis becomes identifiable as a vegetation deity through the consistent way his myth mirrors the life cycle of plants. His birth from the myrrh tree, his violent death, and his seasonal return all correspond to agricultural rhythms of sprouting, cutting, burial, and regrowth. Ancient sources explicitly compare dying gods to grain reaped in the field and rising again from the earth, a logic reinforced by rites in which effigies and fast growing gardens were planted, mourned, and thrown into water to stimulate fertility and rain. Over time, as society shifted from herding and foraging towards settled agriculture, Adonis' sphere narrowed from general natural vitality to cereal crops in particular, aligning his festivals with the spring and summer harvests of barley and wheat. The myth, therefore, preserves not poetic symbolism alone, but a ritual memory of how early communities understand plant life as sacred, mortal, and perpetually renewable. So I thought this was an interesting development here, essentially talking about the migration of the Adonis worship into corn and other cereal crops, and how that's an evolution of this, which I find to be an intriguing development. Frazer's going to push back against this. I think this is a theory that's largely put forward by Lagrange, that Adonis was strictly a corn deity, but Frazer's going to be no, no, no. There was a richer tradition that existed before that. That's why it endures in these other regions that are not necessarily associating it with the corn crop. The thing that I wanted to think about for a second, returning to the the boar wound, right, that goes into the Adonis figure. Well, as I mentioned elsewhere, this is not the first time we've talked about pigs, and I don't know why it just dawned on me yesterday. Like, I look at this stuff all the time, and like, oh wait, did we talk about pigs before? Of course we did. Like I said, with the Christic imagery of JFK and the Bay of Pigs. Well, that's if Jesus is also Adonis, the archetype, the expression of that archetype, according to Frazer, um, then it makes sense that of course Adonis would have a story with the pig. Um, and so the story goes. I'm not some expert. From what I understand, is that the motive for Lee Harvey Oswald to shoot JFK in the normie mind is either he was like I've heard different stories, but I think the idea is that he was a sympathizer, like a communist sympathizer, and he wanted to have revenge for the Bay of Pigs ordeal that Kennedy launched and pulled back from, and that's ultimately what got JFK killed. So if Oswald is an extension of the Bay of Pigs invasion, you could kind of see how it's mimicking the Adonis figure being gored by a boar. Is that interesting to you guys?
Oh, yeah. As soon as you asked me what was JFK and pigs, it's like, oh,
Yeah. What do you
that I
think,
hadn't put
Osik?
together.
You're seeing this for the first time. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, sure it does. I mean, if you even consider that point about, people arranging things in a certain order, or like the universe arranging things in a certain order, that fits. I mean, it brings a new dimension to the Lee Harvey Oswald character, more than just a regular patsy or shooter. So that brings in more dimensions. That makes it's like a hidden hand or something from Cuba. It's reaching out and then doing this. Yeah. I mean,
I
even
can't
this
remember who.
Lee Harvey
Yeah,
Oswald looks like he's being shot in the ribs or something. The way he's flinching. I mean, where was he shot? I'm not sure. Like people don't even analyze like where was he
he,
shot. He might have some significant wounds. I don't
he was
know.
definitely shot in the head.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
Not in the head.
yeah. I mean, I mean, look. I mean, be careful if you. It's trigger warning. If you go back and you watch the Zapruder footage.
No, I'm talking about. Oh, I'm talking about him, Lee Harvey Oswald,
Oh,
not
I
JFK.
think I think he was shot in the stomach. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into
It
it.
Oh,
Jordan might want to pull that up.
it
I
says
thought he's like,
abdomen,
yeah.
so
Hmm.
that would be where the ribs more
I
or
was
less
just
are.
thinking about that tusk going into Adonis's ribs, like a Christ side
Yeah,
wound. So that looks like that.
That's
yeah.
So I
interesting.
thought,
Yeah, they're saying the abdomen,
hmm.
very similar.
The Castro thing is like so interesting. I didn't have a chance to look this up, but I'll try to make a note of it last time. Years ago when I was kind of getting into alternative perspectives, I found this. It might have been Ed Sullivan. It might have been Ed Sullivan. I'll have to look it up, but like some respected leader of like American media like interviewed a young Castro, and he was like introducing this figure to America, and he's like, "Oh, this is like the Cuban version of our George Washington," and it looked like it was like kind of on a film set and stuff like that. I'll have to send it to you guys at some point. This is before Bay of Pigs, or maybe I can pull it up. It was crazy
I've got
looking.
it up. I've
Yeah,
got a
that
Yeah,
still image.
yeah, you've got
wow.
it right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll
It
send it to
does
you.
look
But
like a
yeah,
film
he's
set.
if memory serves me correctly, like Ed Sullivan like goes to Cuba and like everybody's like sitting around on these boxes and he's like, these freedom fighters, these are our friends. And like it wouldn't be much later before the Bay of Pigs thing happens, like a matter of years. Is that 1958? Is that what that's saying, Jordan?
Yes.
But Ed Sullivan told the
Uh,
American people, this is our George, this is their George Washington. And I was like, what? This is insanity. That would be like, I don't know. It'd be kind of like I don't know, like George Bush or someone like that saying, or maybe not George Bush, but like an American media person being like Osama bin Laden, like this is their Thomas Jefferson or something.
But they did say that in the 80s about
Did they
Osama
say
bin
that?
Laden.
Well, that's an interesting template.
They were funding them. I mean, they are still the Syria has been run by an ISIS leader now. It was
Yeah.
like
Well,
he
yeah.
was the
Yeah. If you
most wanted.
there's the is there whole I don't know. There's a book and a movie called Charlie Wilson's War about a Texas senator, I believe, who was funneling money to the Mujahideen in the 80s in order to defeat the
hmm.
Soviet Union. And then supposedly Osama bin Laden came out of that.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you read about Afghanistan, like how it actually happened, that is a lesson to be learned about
Yeah.
how not to do a revolution if you're trying to do it. It's
Yeah.
like a book smart, some nerd who got power. That's the reality. It's like he's not on the ground. He's like, oh, I've killed the king. Now suddenly I can change the culture just in one day. If you don't mind me, I'll like oppress you or something. I mean, that's not how reality works. That's the problem with a lot of leftists. They think that just because they have knowledge, they can change things. You have to have some control over the ground, control over people's minds and hearts if you want to change things for the better. It's like you
Yeah.
cannot make these rash judgments. That really saddened me, that whole scenario.
Aren't, aren't these images crazy of Ed Sullivan just hanging out with Castro? It, I like I don't need LSD to hallucinate.
Yeah. I mean, even Ed Sullivan, he introduced the world to the Beatles,
That's right.
essentially.
That's right. The British invasion. Crazy.
Hmm.
All right. Let's I'm sure we're going to talk about roses at some point. We're going to talk about the boar some more. I got all confused. We're talking about pigs still. So let's go to 663. So I mentioned this earlier about how there are these competing narratives about who sent the boar. One is Ares, one is Artemis, one is Persephone, one is Apollo, the other is Artemis in a different story. In regards to Ares, this arose out of sexual jealousy. He was consumed by rage that Aphrodite preferred the mortal Adonis over him. Ares sent the boar to eliminate his rival. In some versions, Ares becomes the boar himself to gore the youth. Now, why is this interesting? Marilyn Monroe, if she is the Aphrodite figure, or if you know, like I've said earlier, if Jackie and Marilyn are two sides of the same coin and they are fulfilling this archetypal myth of Aphrodite and Persephone, Marilyn was married to Joe DiMaggio before the whole "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" thing, right? And I got to thinking, I was like, like, and I digging into the whole roses thing because I got into that. Apparently, like Joe DiMaggio, for like 20 years after Marilyn died, he would leave roses on her grave, and he just forever loved her. He never stopped loving her. And I was like, I wonder how he felt about the Kennedys. Well, he hated the Kennedys. I some stories are that he wouldn't allow them to come to her funeral. Um, some there are even I think there's any evidence to this, but there's some theories out there that Everybody's trying to find out who killed JFK. Some people have speculated that Joe was, I don't even want to repeat it, right? There is this theory out there that somehow he got involved. I don't believe in any of these. Let me say this out. I don't believe any of these theories are true. Okay. But that's one of the theories that's out there. So that would kind of, if he was like the Aries figure, that would kind of make sense. We've talked about Artemis last time. Persephone. This has been a new. There's this. People believe there's this Mandela effect to the Zapruder film, and a lot of people have become convinced that Jackie could have done it herself, which is really a startling idea and crazy. But this would potentially feed into the narrative. Whether or not these theories are true or not, they seem to be mapping onto these different narratives about who sent the boar. That she got frustrated with sharing Adonis with Aphrodite. So she herself sent the boar. The other ones I haven't really worked out, but I felt like these slotted in easily. I'm not saying any of these theories are true. Just you can see where they're perhaps where these conspiracy theories are coming from an archetypal place.
Yeah, for sure.
They're like action figures.
Yep.
People try to
Yeah, that's
make them fight in
yeah.
their head.
I hate this because these are real people, like, and with real families, and I'm not trying to. And I feel like I'm just kind of looking at this higher layer of mythology that is descending upon ours. And I oftentimes feel like I'm playing with dolls, trying to understand this stuff.
But
But like
that's how the minds of
I've made
people
it known
work.
in other places that I don't think any of these people killed JFK. I've made that clear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's how the mind perceives the world. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And mind is felt by, like Jordan once made a good analogy a few podcasts ago about the game of telephone. Like people say something, then it gets amplified, it gets transformed. It's a worldview that is supported by rumors and rumors alone. And then you can have anything. That's just it's like a layer of unknown. It's like asteroid belt or something. I don't understand it, and it fascinates me to no end. I mean, even Finnegan's Wake is about it. It's about rumors, like how rumors
Yeah.
transform and how we create our own meaning through rumors. And people
Yeah.
mishear rumors and something. So that it fascinates me to no end. Jordan could say anything if she wants. Uh,
I think I'm good to keep moving. We're gonna get to the roses again soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Lagrange and Renan real quick. Okay. This is the last section from the prepared material for today regarding the Golden Bough. But on slide 664 there, Jordan, scholars have
Yes.
interpreted the Adonis rites through increasingly refined theoretical lenses. Early observers recognized the ceremonies as expressions of seasonal death and renewal, but modern interpretation focused on how ritual, agriculture, and belief evolved together. Father Lagrange argued that the mourning was fundamentally a harvest rite, with lamentation serving to appease the corn spirit violently slain by sickle, threshing floor, and mill. Frazer largely accepted this view, integrating it into his broader vegetation spirit theory while extending the pattern backward to earlier pastoral and foraging societies where the dying god embodied grass, fruit, or wild growth rather than grain alone. Ernest Renan offered a contrasting interpretation, viewing Adonis worship as a sensuous and poetic cult of death shaped by Lebanon's landscape and emotional atmosphere. But Frazer rejected this as overly abstract and personally colored. Taken together, these theories show not contradiction, but layering. Ritual practice remains stable, while interpretation shifts from practical fertility magic to philosophical reflection, revealing how ancient rites absorb new meanings as societies, economies, and symbolic imagination evolved. So I talked earlier about how um, I think Frazer pretty effectively just demonstrates that Adonis is not solely a corn deity by going deeper into these. festivals that are largely vegetation rituals. I think that's a fair rebuttal to Lagrange, but also Lagrange has got this corn. It has its place. The Renan aesthetic confusion theory. I don't know if it was something that I truly grasped. I'd have to go deeper into it to do it justice. But I think what Fraser is trying to point out with the Adonis rituals is that they're blended, right? That you can mourn and lament, but at the same time be joyous. And all these things can go together because you're releasing the vegetation spirit and and you're fearful of it. You want to stay away from it because there are certain parameters where it can still infect you until it gets into a new body. But you're also joyful because this means the agricultural cycle is going to replenish and that good times are ahead. Not that not that the landscape somehow of Lebanon creates this situation where people are having confused emotions. That so but maybe there's more to Renan's theory. He kind of mentions it. I don't want to say in passing, but doesn't develop it enough for me to truly understand what Renan is saying. So that's this pretty much concludes the material from the chapter, and now we'll go deeper into some of the symbolism. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything about this.
And I love this slide, in the sense that,
You
yeah,
good?
I mean, in the same imagery could yield so many different interpretations from three thinkers, and like Fraser's criticism of Renan's theory is also like, you can even, he's talking about Lebanon, but you can even place this into, Wild West America. There's, I mean, wherever there's an emotional resonance. I mean, there's so many images. It's like a triptych. Adonis' story. First, he's like born, and then there's another story about him being killed by a boar, and then he, inspires roses. So there's this triptych, and every culture looks at it and appropriates whatever they feel that speaks to them. So even in Lebanon, or maybe you can talk about in like 18th century America, in the Wild West, where people are like frontiermen, they could even, get inspired by that image. Or like, even like people talk about Yukio Mishima, he gets inspired by that Saint Sebastian figurine, or like the painting. So there's, I mean, that's the beauty of like art from my perspective, and that's why I really like this one, because it's like you already talked about, it's not an exact science, and people can have different interpretations, but it's like what speaks to them. So yeah,
I
that's
think
what I
it's a
wanted to say.
fantastic. I think it's a fantastic point. Something that I looked into, but I didn't really find a lot. A lot that was really convincing to me was I wanted to because I found all this symbolism that's associated with JFK and roses, and that gets into the gardens of Adonis. I wanted to find things that where JFK was associated with corn. If there was like this overwhelming amount of stuff that associated JFK with corn, it'd be like, okay, this is clearly the Adonis ritual. And there's some stuff there. Some of the more interesting things are like he gave this very significant speech at the Corn Palace, I think in South Dakota, but this has kind of become a campaign pit stop. And I think it's interesting that you bring up that this myth is going to replay in the breadbasket of America. And the first thing that came to mind was the Field of Dreams movie. And I expect if one were to apply the ritual of Adonis to that, where they're hearing the voice. Kevin Costner is hearing the spirits in the corn. By the way, that movie is profoundly Mandela affected. Everybody in America remembers it as if you build it, they will come. That the people will show up. All right. And on this timeline, it's if you build it, he will come. And I guess the whole story now is about the return of his father, which gets into this whole resurrection theme as well. And he plows up the cornfield. I'm not saying I've done some sort of Adonis analysis to it, but like you were last week, Ostic, we're using what we've learned about Adonis to understand the shining in a new light. I think Field of Dreams would be one that would be ripe for commentary in this respect, and probably many others. That's just the first one that came to mind.
Something that pops up for me is corn is one of the most heavily pesticided, GMO'd crops in
Mm,
America.
that's right.
It's also highly subsidized by the government. So there seems to be something there. Are we killing off Adonis? Are we perverting Adonis? I don't really understand what frequency is playing out, but corn is a big thing I avoid because it is highly toxic these days, which is likely not the case in the context of these original rituals where you have more varieties of corn, you have more localized forms of corn. You're not spraying it with glyphosate during and after harvesting.
I
So
think
I
that's
don't know.
yeah, I think that's a really profound observation. Like, what does it mean for the you know, if the whole JFK thing is an Adonis ritual and we have this emergence of genetically modified uh, crops, how does that fit into all of this? And what does it mean for the potential return of Adonis?
We've
That's a
already
great point,
talked
Jordan.
about the ghost in the field of maize that
Yeah.
sits there when you harvest the maize, and you should not go there as a child.
Yeah.
There, that's it's kind of creepy. I mean, even the sickle, it's like it's like the Grim Reaper.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Saturn.
I, there were some interesting images. There are like, during the time, I think during in these elections or whatnot, they even made corn mazes with like, you know how if you go through like rural parts of America and you'll see like farmers will paint things on their barn roofs or whatnot, or um, plant the crops in such a way that they spell things sometimes or whatnot. But there were like these corn mazes that people made with like the image of JFK in them. But this is I didn't see enough where I was like, "Oh, well, this is so lopsidedly in favor of JFK. This just seems to be part of the American election cycle now. Like this is just part of the ritual that happens in the breadbasket now when because a big part of the early primary process is to these presidential contenders like go to Iowa. Like Iowa is like the first real primary test. So the state that nobody thinks about, and then once every 4 years, there's suddenly all that anybody can talk about because how Iowa votes oftentimes decides who's going to be the candidate for the party.
The bellwether.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. That's right. You guys okay with taking 5?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. We'll be right back.
All right.
And Jordan, I'm going to have you read a consequential part here, that text below from Ovid's Metamorphosis, the Brooks Moore edition. But before we do that, I'll read this meme here that has a quote from Jackie. Every time we got off the plane that day, 3 times they gave me the yellow roses of Texas. But in Dallas, they gave me red roses. I thought, how funny, red roses. So all the seat was full of blood and roses, and red roses, I'm sorry. So clearly, Jackie saw the significance of this event. And perhaps to contextualize it, I made mention of the myth of Aphrodite being cut by the thorns of the roses. But why don't we go to the source itself? So, Jordan, if you would mind reading from Ovid for us.
Sure. And now sweet Aphrodite, borne through air in her light chariot, had not yet arrived at Cyprus on the wings of her white swans. Afar she recognized his dying groans and turned her white birds towards the sound. And when down looking from the lofty sky she saw him, nearly dead, his body bathed in blood, she leaped down, tore her garment, tore her hair, and beat her bosom with distracted hands. And blaming fate, said, "But not everything is at the mercy of your cruel power. My sorrow for Adonis will remain, enduring as a lasting monument. Each passing year, the memory of his death shall cause an imitation of my grief. Your blood, Adonis, will become a flower perennial. Was it not allowed to you, Persephone, to transform Menth's limbs into sweet, fragrant mint? And can this change of my loved hero be denied to me? Her grief declared, she sprinkled his blood with sweet smelling nectar, and his blood, as soon as touched by it, began to effervesce, just as transparent bubbles always rise in rainy weather. Nor was there a pause more than an hour when from Adonis' blood, exactly of its color, a loved flower sprang up, such as pomegranates give to us, small trees which later hide their seeds beneath a tough rind. But the joy it gives to man is short lived, for the winds which give the flower its name, anemone, shake it right down, because its slender hold, always so weak, lets it fall to the ground from its frail stem.
Beautifully read and beautifully written. So props to Brooks Moore for this translation. So this is where the story of, or at least one version of the story of Aphrodite and Adonis comes from, and the rose springing from Adonis. And why is this so interesting? Okay, so we do have the blood-soaked red roses from Dallas. This seems to, I mean, of anything that we've looked at in terms of the killing of the king ritual and how it may possibly be connected to JFK, I would say this is the strongest. This is ripped right out of the narrative in a lot of way, the mingling of the blood and rose. But this is not where the Rose Association stops with JFK. I mentioned the famous Rose Garden, and then his mother's name was Rose. And so so throughout JFK, his life, his presidency, and his death, he is associated with roses. Um, so thinking about his mother named Rose, this is not unlike Adonis being born from the myrrh tree. His mother, Adonis's mother in the myth, is a tree. And we see that JFK is born from a woman named Rose. Now, that might seem like a really simple reduction, but it is striking to me. Okay. And then maybe, I don't know exactly why he got so obsessed with rose gardens. Perhaps it was he was motivated by the love of his mother for some reason. I think I read somewhere about him taking trips to Europe with Jackie, and they seeing such gardens there that he was like, we got to have one at the White House. Which brings into conversation this close personal friend of Jackie Kennedy named Bunny Mellon. Now, Bunny was not her real name. This was a pet name that was given to her as a result of supposedly looking like a bunny when she was a small child, and it stuck with her throughout her life. But her name's like Rachel Lambert Mellon or something like that. And she was the second wife of an incredibly rich man, Paul Mellon, who we've talked about here in other ways because his first wife, Mary Conover Mellon, was responsible for translating and disseminating the works of Carl Jung in English to the English-speaking peoples. Now, after Mary Conover passed away, Paul remarried to Bunny. And from what I understand, Paul became much more of a Freudian. I think the interest in Jung, even though he was analyzed by Jung, was primarily driven by Mary Conover, but he himself became Freudian after this. Bunny Mellon, from what I understand, had an abiding respect for Jung. There are images later in life where she has copies of the Red Book displayed at her mansion, but she got more really into the mystical side of things. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And so I want to think about this bunny imagery. There's even articles like on the White House page that read something like "A Bunny in the Rose Garden," and she was the one that designed JFK's Rose Garden. And then later on, JFK got a hybridized rose named after him. It's seen right here. The name of it exactly escapes me now. I've looked this up elsewhere. So did Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe got her own hybrid rose. We'll look at it as well. Apparently, it's particularly good at dwelling in hot heat, which could be a reference to Some Like It Hot, perhaps. And Jackie, from what I understand, did not get a rose named after her, but maybe she will one day. So this constellation of rose imagery around JFK seems really profound to me right now. It's probably the strongest mirroring of the Adonis and Aphrodite myth, if you ask me. The bunny in the rose garden we'll look at it in a second, but I believe that's going to be another fertility symbol associated with Aphrodite. So of course, a woman named Bunny would be responsible for the design of the rose garden.
She also helped design the gravesite at Arlington Cemetery where they laid
Yeah,
JFK to rest
yeah, yeah.
with the eternal flame.
Which and the eternal flame is like so many of the rituals that we've looked at so far with Adonis is a way to perpetually remember Adonis, right? Not unlike how the anemones turned the river red uh, in was it Cyprus or something? So yeah. Now I want to go deeper into fire symbolism in Adonis. I've not had a chance to do that justice, but I think
Mhm.
there's gotta be something there. And Jackie was the one who made the decision that they're going to represent his memory with the eternal flame. But one could possibly see the eternal flame as like this ethereal representation of the vegetative spirit that has been uh, released from the body and is like temporarily housed there. And
Mm.
maybe it'll go out one day and take the form of somebody else. I don't know, but one could see it. We've looked at in previous episodes how artifacts were understood to contain the essence. And the kingship could pass via artifacts. So it was a crown or a scepter or something like that that contained the spirit. I wonder if the eternal flame will always be eternal.
It's a provocative question.
Yeah. Ostic, what do you think about all this?
And the fact that he was his whole garden was designed by a woman who was actually married to a guy who was previously married to the translator of Young. That blows me away. I mean, it's like hanging out with Young himself. I mean, if you're that close, like she
It's
must be the
incredible,
foremost
isn't it?
authority on Young during that time, and she is hanging out with him. I mean, he's in that same circle. That fascinates me. And the even just his idea of thinking of White House as his own house is like, oh, we should have a garden there. I mean, if I go somewhere and I'm supposed to be there temporarily, I would not think about renovating the place too much to my liking. I'm here for only like he like it's so difficult to comprehend the mind of a person who thinks of himself as an aristocrat. I mean, he thought of himself because he had this family pedigree behind him. I mean, he must have thought, I'm born to do this. I'm here. This is my place. This is what I was meant to do. Now I'm here. Like everything in my life has I have manipulated or maneuvered my way to this point. So I really like this idea. I mean, I've never been able to have this mindset. Even if I'm staying at a university dorm, I wouldn't like to decorate it too much. I'm like, I'm here for only two years. I would not do it. But it's like, oh, we should have built a whole garden there. That's a whole mindset shift. That really impressed
Well,
me.
to be fair to JFK, he's not the first person to be president and to make an addition or an amendment to the White House. There's a long tradition of presidents updating and improving the White House grounds. Now we even see it going on in America right now. We're going to talk about this a little bit in a few slides, but Trump has um, paved over the main green of the Rose Garden, and there's a big hubbub and outrage about that because it's seen as a sacred stage, and potentially undermining the myth of Adonis that JFK would be associated with. Although people don't say it that way, I don't think anyone's ever, my entire life, associated JFK with Adonis. Although perhaps when I was a teenager, I heard such things about JFK Jr. because he was such a hunk. But as I've talked about elsewhere, he seems to be more Icarian than anything. Um, and then Trump has also attached his name to the Kennedy Center, which many people see as a living monument, complete with moon
Yeah.
trees. We've talked about this, right? The moon trees are significant in all this. So,
It's like
rightly
a
or
hidden
wrongly, it's
religion in America. That's what it seems like.
well, this is the interesting question, right? Like clearly Jackie is sensitive to it. Jackie can sense the symbolism of it with the blood and the red roses. Um, I don't want to speak for Bunny. Bunny was an incredibly educated woman. She has an extensive library preserved on horticulture, and from what I understand, though I've not seen it personally, on the occult. Um, so, and she was considered to be one of Jackie's closest friends, if not her best friend. I think she was the first person Jackie called after the assassination. So these are very sophisticated, educated women. I don't. I, I think it would be. I think they would sense it in some way, but I don't know if they're necessarily designing it or making it happen. I wouldn't say that, but I think they would be sensitive to the symbolism involved in all of it.
Yeah.
And if you look at the rose garden, Bunny went to great detail to include diamonds and different rotations of different types of flowers. There were even anemones in the rose garden, from what I understand at one point, but they were kind of rotated in and out because of their life cycle.
Also, she and I'm forgetting the name of I don't know if gardener is the correct term, but her collaborator who really helped translate her visions and creative concepts into tangible but gardens,
Mhm.
they were very fixated on shadows and how
Interesting.
shadows play into the garden at different times of day. So there's a solar element here as well. In one instance, there's a story of her having a faux tree created because some of the trees that she had planted were not taking to the spot they were in. So
Hmm.
she had a fake tree made so that it
Interesting.
could create the different heights that she desired and kind of the anchoring elements of the garden that she was trying to achieve through the use of trees. So it's very detailed. It's very fascinating to me. She was even invited to upgrade and create one of the gardens at Versailles. So this is someone who is very well connected. Just like Jackie, was very connected into the fashion world and with jewelers and really considered a huge icon of home and gardens in America. Bunny Mellon is a huge figure here, and
Yeah.
Jackie is more well known, but also very influential on the aesthetic culture of America and even Europe. So there's a lot going on, and Bunny had to have been exposed to a lot of these archetypes with some of the people she was familiar with, some of the books in her library. It's very curious to me how much of this is intentionally brought in and channeled into the gardens and the gridding. We're talking about grid work. We're talking about designing landscapes to create a certain frequency, and even if it's done unknowingly, just in the sense of looking for visual harmony and balance and beauty, that's still super deep and it's very magical.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuff like this that makes you like, I can see this both ways. Like people who want to believe in like conspiracy theory, right? Want to be like, oh, see, like there were hands at work that specifically gave Jackie the red roses that day in Dallas because they were acting out this Adonis ritual. That seems plausible, right? Like you could imagine, because she's surprised. She's like, "Why were I was getting all these yellow roses, and there's this whole thing about the yellow rose of Texas, and then I got the red roses that day." You can see like where human hands may be part of this, but then you have to also claim that like JFK's mother was chosen to be his mother because she has the name Rose, and that doesn't seem to be subject to conspiracy theory. So that's why it's almost like whatever conspiracy theory you're coming up with, it seems to be a layer that is meant to stall us out from getting at this deeper matrix of archetypes that's really driving everything. Unless you want to believe that like JFK's parents were somehow like it was like an arranged marriage to bring this ritual together. Uh,
I don't think that's out of the question, but there's clearly elements that could not have been orchestrated on a human level, at least not with the support of an alliance with non-physical entities.
that's a lot of manipulation to make that happen. So
Well, you're
that's the
Merlin today, so you you should know all about those alliances that might.
yeah. Yeah. something I learned while watching Excalibur was that Merlin is kind of a time traveler. He's from the future living backwards. That's how he knows so much. He's kind of like a Benjamin Button or something like that. Ostic, you've been wanting to weigh in on something.
I was just wondering about the if you have seen the movie Being There with Peter Sellers.
Yes, we need to talk about that at some point.
Yeah,
I love being it's what I it's it might be in my like top 20 movies. It's a great movie.
yeah. I mean, he is a gardener in that movie, and he maneuvers
That's
his
right. He's
way into the
Chance.
yeah. He's Chance the gardener, and he maneuvers his way like even he like fumbles his way into the White House and all the higher echelons of power just by speaking in metaphor all the time. I mean, that's what they say, but like, what is the underlying message of that movie? I mean, people don't really understand. I mean, it could be something about it could have some sort of a truth in there because people are acting so receptive to his thing. So even if it seems banal, there might be some truth in it. But like I'm not really sure how to interpret because earlier I used to interpret it as a farce, but now after knowing all of this, now it seems a bit more concrete. It's not exactly a farce. It's like there is some reality to it. That's why he is having the effect that he's having in the White House and in the Rand Corporation or in the wherever he's going. It's a very alchemical movie. I think this one is.
It
I mean,
really is.
it even
Peter Sellers
has
is a very alchemical. I was just gonna say Peter Sellers is a very alchemical actor. Like these themes follow him around to all the different films, like The Party and The Magic Christian. Have you seen The Magic Christian? Because I highly recommend people see that. I feel like that's a revelatory film.
yeah, it's a pretty good movie. I mean, I think the first time we talked to each other was when you posted about Magic Christian and I responded to your story because on that elephant something was written on that elephant.
Oh, that's The Party. That's The Party where the elephant in
Oh,
the
right.
room and has "The world is flat" written on it.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. I never thought about that. I never noticed
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's interesting. So yeah, he
Yeah.
was
Elephant in
very
the room. Not, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And in this movie, there's a reference to 2001 as well, and the moon landing. Do you remember
Yep.
this? Yeah, I mean, you
Oh, of
keeping
course. Yeah. They play he walks by a electronics store and he's able to recreate the moon landing in the storefront window while like a funk version of Thus Spake Zarathustra is playing,
yeah,
which
exactly. I
is
mean,
like,
that is
yeah.
that was mind-boggling to me. I mean, I could not really understand what it meant. I'm trying to hold back from falling into all of this head first. But now, with more context, I think I have a bit more understanding, a nuanced worldview about what might be really happening. So, yeah, I think
Yeah.
viewers should check this movie out. It's a pretty interesting movie.
Yeah. I think the guy who made this movie is named Hal. So that's interesting as well. Is
Hal
Hal
Ashby.
something or other? Does anybody remember who made Being There?
Hal Ashby. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So that's intriguing to me as well. It's like a potentially another connection in 2001. Let's talk a little bit more about Bunny if we can go to the next slide. Oh, I do want to say one thing about this, and it's relevant to this as well. I haven't had a chance to go deeper into this. I'm going to probably try to talk about it next week when we talk about La Pieta and how Mary and Jesus are potentially archetypes of Adonis and or analogs of Adonis and Aphrodite. But the fact that the fact that the rose garden was such a priority, it does kind of bring in the whole Garden of Eden story as well. So I'm curious. I've not had a chance to research this, but I wonder if the gardens of Adonis and the Garden of Eden are connected via the Christ figure. So we'll see. Um, okay, what do I want to do here? So here's a picture of Bunny and Jackie, presumably at some horse race or horse event or whatever. They look like good friends. I'll tell you what. Yeah, I mean, they look like they were really there for each other. It looks like they had a good friendship, from all the images that I could see. I think while I get my thoughts together, Jordan, why don't you read this passage from Philostratus the Elder, 1.6, if you don't mind?
Of course. But there is no shooting of arrows at the hare, since they are trying to catch it alive as an offering most pleasing to Aphrodite. For you know, I imagine, what is said of the hare, that it possesses the gift of Aphrodite to an unusual degree. At any rate, it is said of the female that while she suckles the young she has borne, she bears another litter to share the same milk. Forthwith she conceives again, nor is there any time at all when she is not carrying young. As for the male, he not only begets offspring in the way natural to males, but also himself bears young, contrary to nature. And perverted lovers have found in the hare a certain power to produce love, attempting to secure the objects of their affection by a compelling magic art.
So this passage tells us about how important the rabbit was to Aphrodite. And if JFK is Adonis or Tammuz and Jackie is some aspect of Aphrodite or Ishtar, I've talked about her being Persephone, perhaps, then it would make sense that her closest confidant would be Bunny, right? Like if she's somehow connected to Aphrodite. And I got thinking a little bit more about this. But by the way, this is an image that I've used in previous conversations. This is Madonna of the Rabbit. There are these old paintings of the Virgin Mary associated with uh, of hares and rabbits. It's like a syncretization with the Aphrodite mythology, right? That she's some sort of further iteration of that. And you can see her with the Christ child there. This brings into conversation the idea of Easter, right? The rabbit is not only a fertility symbol, but it's a symbol of the resurrection of Christ. So the fact that there's like a bunny in the rose garden is going to be very significant, especially since roses themselves are symbols of resurrection and immortality. So it's all kind of blending together. Do you see this? Or does anybody else see this? Or is this just me? That
Absolutely.
And I mean, this, like I said, this could not be a conspiracy. This has to be an archetypal overlay on our reality. Could there be a conspiracy that Rachel Lambert or Rachel Lowe Lambert or whatever her name was? I shouldn't say it like that. Bunny Mellon. Is there some conspiracy that involves her as a small child looking like a bunny, right? And then that nickname sticking for her entire life? I don't think so. This is fate. This is destiny. And that she would get so close to the halls of power and be associated with the Aphrodite. I think this is another argument for the mythic enactment of the higher reality in our mundane one. I'd say this is a great argument against conspiracy theory.
Oh yeah, it's quite interesting.
What do you think, Ostic? You buying my anti-conspiracy push?
Yeah, I think there's some logic to it. I mean, I think that whole image that we discussed about that priestess who or some lady was there a few months ago. You talked about it, and she talked about the fractal reality. Now that seems to be more and more my consensus about these things, because it's like we see things in the micro and then they play out in the macro sense. It's like if they're playing out in the macro, we will eventually find them in a micro realities as well. It's like that. So it's like we're looking for the things.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to find these things ourselves. I mean, yeah. I don't have anything profound to say or even coherent. So yeah,
No.
spare
But
me.
it's weird, right? Like it's weird trying to reason through the images, isn't it? It's like it's not, I was trained to do like logical proofs, and I had to take a bunch of like symbolic logic and deductive systems and things like this. And it's like, how do you apply reason
Oh, little
to
lords.
image analysis?
So
What's that?
little odds. I mean, it's statistically impossible for these things to align in that way. I mean,
Yeah.
like you'd have to be a master manipulator to do it, but like I don't think people would have had such interest in all their lives to manipulate them to that particular event just right from when they're born to, you know. Yeah, it's just the beauty of, whatever the nature, God, universe. That's what I'm seeing. I'm just, it's a humbling experience in a sense.
Isn't it really? It's really awe-inspiring, I think. I
Yeah.
think it makes you the reason why I like doing this sort of associative mapping is that it makes you see, in my opinion, the intelligent hand of God in a way that is not discussed. You talk about like biologists who see like the perfect interconnected nature of the organs of, say, a frog or a fish or a tree, and how it all is interdependent and works together towards the telos of
Mm.
that organism. And they talk about the awe that they have for that. Not too many people, because there's a lot of atheism now in the air quotes hard sciences, right? Um, but I think these are proofs of God in a way that have been completely neglected. And part of me starts to wonder if like all this conspiracy talk that is associated with JFK or moon landings or whatever else is actually contaminating one of the most beautiful revelations that we have. It's giving people too much credit and imbuing too many ulterior motives.
Yeah, man. I mean, that line that we talked about, it's like I'd rather have God, believe that God is doing all this rather than these demonic cults operating from the shadows. That line stuck with me for a long time. So that's what I try to think of these things as.
Unfortunately, I think it's a little both,
I
but
don't disagree.
just just when you
I'm talking about
read the
ultimately, at the end of the day.
well, when we're talking about these cults doing magic, there's only so much that they can do too that defies God's will, at least as my perspective. And there's certainly a price being paid. So it's not like they have all the power, you know. The power in coming into harmony with God's will and your destiny. And of course, there are choices you can make within that arc. There's so much more power in that. But unfortunately, I think there's more than a handful of humans who have made some choices to make deals that
Mm,
I would not recommend.
yeah,
And to your point earlier about can we apply logic to this? Well, the very nature of logic rests on the assumption that causality is a thing.
that's
And
right.
what a lot of this to me is pointing to is causality in this realm is not real in the way that I was taught. This week, I've been reading through a book called Anastasia, and in it, there's sort of an aside that I really sat with for a while. And she says, people think that the astrology affects humans, but it is the humans who are affecting the astrology. And I thought that was such a fascinating idea to flip it around. Jung talks about acausality, right? Which my current understanding of, which is immature, is sort of a frequency match of different things. There's these bundles of energies that are attracted to each other. And it's not that A causes B, it's that A and B are both emanations of the same energy rippling through the
Yeah,
non-physical and the physical
right.
planes. So it's not causality in that way. I think it's very difficult for me to let go of that analytical frame because I've been pretty successful, as I think both of you, using that to navigate the world, to achieve success, to achieve outcomes that feel beneficial. And it's not a bad thing. However, there is a limitation to it. And I do not think that it can really crack the puzzle on what we're looking at here, because what we're looking at is well beyond any framework of logic.
Yeah, I second that. Ostic, yes.
No, I was, yeah, I mean,
You just
I
saying
think I'm on
amen?
shrooms. Yeah. No, no, I'm just,
Yeah,
I
it
think
is
I'm
like that.
shrooms.
You
Yeah.
don't need them. That's
Yeah, you don't need them. By the way, we're going to talk about LSD here in a little bit. I found
that's
out
right.
yesterday as I was preparing, that LSD was actually super important to getting us the image of the Earth, the Philosopher's Stone, as I've ID'd. I hope I've correctly identified the Philosopher's Stone. I may revise that, but yeah, LSD was essential to that. I'll tell that story in a little bit.
Well, all these symbols, as we've already spoken about, have different levels, different vantage points of consciousness. They mean different things in different cultural contexts. They mean different things and appear in different ways. So I certainly think your interpretation is a valid one.
All right. Well, we got 12 more slides to get through, and
Okay. We've
we
got
got
an hour.
exactly an hour. Well, we'll see. We've been talking for an hour and a half, and we've gotten
Okay.
through 9 of them. But it's okay. If it spills over to next week, that's fine too. I think we can be kind of quick about this. I've used the expression mythic enactment. I think that's something that's important that we think about in terms of how to talk about what we're looking at, this phenomenon, in addition to the archetypal psychohistory. And when we talk about mythic enactment, some of the things that we can look to, I mean, obviously, there's Carl Jung's work on synchronicity that Jordan just mentioned, but some of the other thinkers that we want to look at, we might want to look at The Great Mother text by Eric Neumann, especially when we start to think about how um, Rose Kennedy gave birth to a man that ultimately died with his blood covering roses, right? Like that somehow, like the Great Mother is relevant in this whole conversation. Now, I found another guy named Lloyd DeMoss, who I guess started the Journal of Psychohistory. His I guess his idea is that, and this I'll just read this: historical events are actings out of shared childhood traumas and unconscious desires. The American public unconsciously staged JFK's death as a sacrificial drama, using the rose as a symbolic prop to decorate a shared fetal or birth related fantasy. I'm not sure he said that, but what I had the chat GP or I had the Google Gemini thing apply his theories to this. I think it'd be worth looking into, like, how we have collected trauma that forces these things to happen. Maybe that's a case. Maybe Lloyd DeMouse's archetypal lens would be important to this. I don't really think about how individual or collective childhood trauma affects these outcomes. I typically think about it in terms of us already as formed individuals who are experiencing the trauma, but there might be something about that developmental stage that causes these in ways that being an adult and witnessing them doesn't. Like, for instance, me seeing 9/11 happen as a 21-year-old perhaps affected you and Jordan differently. I mean, if you have any recollection of it at all.
Thankfully, I was not overly exposed to it. I
Yeah.
was in second grade, and we did not see it. We did not watch it at school. It was nothing like that for me. But I know that there are other people my age who it was more of an event, sort of like Luke. I think the Challenger
Yeah.
explosion was really something they shocked and awed you all
Yeah. I think
in
that was
school with.
particularly shown to, and that might be, I think that was trained on children more than any other group, because what they did with that is they had established this precedent of wheeling the television into the classrooms to show the space shuttle launches, which we were all super excited about. And then for that particular flight, they did it so that there was a civilian. There are all these civilians that were supposed to go up in the Challenger. I think Big Bird, the guy, like the actual puppet, big with Muppet, Big Bird was supposed to be on it. I think John Denver wanted to be on it. There's a couple others, but ultimately they chose this woman named Christina McAuliffe, I think, and she was like a teacher, and so it was a big deal. We were all in school. We had teachers just like her, so we were all pretty excited to see it. And boy, was it awkward once it happened.
Well, and it was a proxy that you all could easily attach yourselves to
Yes.
and project
Yeah.
really yourself into. The idea that you would be considering Big Bird, like, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
how preposterous. So you're choosing icons that have a special affinity with children.
Yeah.
It's really messed up.
Yeah, to this day, a lot of the, space station stuff they do for kid audiences and stuff like that. Every once in a while, they'll show it on the news, but they'll, like, pump it in for assemblies and things like that, and, they'll have, like, little toys and things like that up there so that, it gets the kids more involved. It's still an ongoing thing. It's like a puppet show. Anywho, um, yeah, Ostic.
Just one aside, I wanted to push back against this idea about like I've seen like there's a whole paradigm where it talks about childhood traumas and everything. Everything boils down to our childhood traumas. And I thought that you brought up a good point that you as a 21-year-old witnessing that event would have a very different effects as a child would have had. So I mean, there are even with there's a movie called Lawrence of Arabia where it discusses this.
Oh, I gotta see it. Yeah,
So
I
it
gotta
does
see
not
that.
discuss this explicitly, but it's like you see a man who's fully formed, who's fully confident in himself, and then he goes into, into the war and he gets into battles and everything. And when he comes out of it, he's completely broken. It's not just the cliche of him being broken, but it's not like people are talking about his childhood or he's thinking about his mother or something. It's just that war itself can break you. It's like even experiences during adulthood can affect you. So I really thought that was a refreshing idea. I mean, every time I see a movie, people that talk about all these random serial killers. Oh, they were abused in childhood. Childhood does this. Childhood does that. But it's like even in adult life, you can have transformative experiences that could like shake you to the core. So I don't like all these things about fetal and birth fantasy like overwrought in some way. So it's like I try to push back against them. It's like it's not the only thing. People like to think of as the only thing, but it's like even Full Metal Jacket is that way. Like Joker, he does not seem to have any childhood trauma or something. It's Pyle who has that. But like Joker
Right.
himself, he changes by the end of it. He's like transformed into a killer, or like he's like he kills his child like by the end of the war. So it's like that. Like the girl he kills, it's his own child. The thing the
But
greatest transgression he will not do. Women and children. The girl is both a woman and a child, and he's shooting that's just transgression beyond his accepted worldview.
by the way, I'm glad you brought up Full Metal Jacket for the future. I find, talking about all this vegetation ritual stuff and Adonis and whatnot, Viet I got to thinking about the whole flower power thing. There's a lot of greenery involved in Vietnam. I think about it like in jungles, fought by Marines and army men wearing green. I think the Marines were even known as like the mean green machine. I find this kind of interesting that all this, the flower power, the blue marble, the eco movement in Vietnam are all kind of happening at the same time. So I don't have a lot to say about it other than that, but I find that very interesting. And I just want to point out, I've grown accustomed to this photo of JFK in the Rose Garden. Like against the backdrop of everything we've talked about, like, doesn't he kind of look like a vegetation spirit, like in his element a little bit? Like there's something there's something transcendental about this photo, like and mythological. It's not just JFK in a garden to me.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And Osik, I totally agree. I mean, trauma can be very damaging to the psyche at any point, you know. When you're talking about Luke, all these different movements happening, Well, Forrest Gump really illustrates it
Yeah.
in your face. I think
And his name
it's
is Forrest. He's a
Yep,
Ah,
green.
ooh, that is interesting. That is interesting.
exactly.
Gosh,
Yeah.
this is really a skeleton key for a lot of different films, isn't it?
It is, it is, and I know Forrest Gump will be related later when we get to the other film you wanna cover.
That's interesting. That's
Mhm.
interesting.
'Cause they equate him
Yeah.
to Forrest Gump.
All right. Let's talk about some roses. Finally, talking about roses. So I love my Penguin Dictionary of Symbols. Jordan, what the why don't you read the second paragraph in its entirety
Sure.
for us?
In Christian iconography, the rose may be either the chalice into which Christ's blood flowed, or the transfiguration of those drops of blood, or again, the symbol of Christ's wounds. A Rosicrucian symbol depicts 5 roses, one at the center and one at each of the 4 arms of the cross. This conjures images of the Grail, or else of the heavenly rose of the redemption. In the Rosicrucian context, it should be observed that its emblem sets a rose in the very center of the cross. That is where the Sacred Heart, Christ's heart, is located. This symbol is the same as the Rosa Candida in Dante's Divine Comedy, and that in turn conjures Our Lady's title, Mystic Rose, in litanies of the Blessed Virgin and that of the medieval poem Roman de la Rose. Angelus Silesius takes the rose for an image of the soul, as well as of Christ who leaves his mark upon it. The golden rose, which the Pope used once to bless on the 4th Sunday in Lent, was a symbol of his spiritual power and teaching, but doubtless a symbol of resurrection and of immortality as well.
Thank you very much. Like, so I the entry for rose in the Penguin Dictionary. By the way, anyone who's listening, go get yourself um the Penguin Dictionary of Symbols or maybe the Taschen one. I want to get that. But I have learned so much by just going through this, and I really need to just get in the habit of like this is the first place I go, because I can't believe when we talked about roses earlier, this stuff didn't occur to me. So the fact that the rose can be connected to the wounding of Christ on the cross, which is caught by the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail, there's a lot of discussion about what the Holy Grail is. Is it from the Last Supper? Is it from the was is it from the blood that's collected from Christ after his side gets pierced? But this is especially significant since we are told that the Kennedy administration is connected to Camelot, right? And King Arthur is after the Holy Grail. So the roses themselves, through archetypal symbolism, are adjacent and part of that story. So it all is fitting together. And I've mentioned earlier how the rose is connected to resurrection and immortality, but also it brings into conversation the Divine Comedy again, specifically the white rose that is encountered at the center, I believe, in paradise, which I think has Mary in the middle of. So we can see this symbolism repeating itself from Adonis and Aphrodite to Jesus and Mary, carrying over into King Arthur and also into Dante. It's it's just it just I don't know what to say. It just like keeps circling around these people in this administration. And we've talked about Dante in regards to the space program possibly being an exploration of the underworld and heaven. You know, the Apollo 1 begins with an inferno, and the captain is a man named Virgil, right? And then ultimately, right, the goal is to go to the moon, and one of the first celestial spaces that that is ventured to is the moon. So I find, and Virgil cannot go to the moon because he's not a Christian, right? According to Dante's story. And this seems to be tracking the Apollo space program.
Yes, yes, yes. I wanted to flash real quick the book
Yeah.
because I do think it's such a fabulous book, worth getting. You can get a used copy very affordably.
This is,
As
I got it for like $7 at a thrift shop, and it
Yeah,
was it's by far been the best $7 I've ever spent on a book.
yeah, it is really, really good. Um, yeah, I mean, the imagery of the rose and the Sacred Heart is really a core part of my own spiritual practices, so it's been fun to kind of sit with this a little bit more than usual this week.
There's also a connection to I didn't really go too deep into it. I'm still trying to understand it, but we talked a little bit about the Divine Mother, the Great Mother. But
Mm.
in India, I guess it says this aspect is in any case familiar in India, where Triparasundari, the cosmic rose, is used as a point of comparison with the Divine Mother's beauty. So that's going to be relevant to that mythic enactment that we talked about with Eric Neumann and the Great Mother. Although
That's
I'm having trouble saying more than that right now.
yeah, I think this is something to dwell upon, and it's like
Yeah.
Tripar Sundari. That's what it's called. Like three is three, and par is petals, and Sundari is beauty. The beauty of three
Mm,
petals. It's like that.
I love it. I love it. We have more rose symbolism to talk about from the penguin entry, but if you guys want to hang out here for a second, um, I might need to step away for a second.
Sure. We can just pause.
Oh yeah, just pause. Give me. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So we can progress to the next slide, Jordan. I think I've got some more reading for you in this one, but I
Yeah,
think I finally figured out the meaning of the blue rose from Twin Peaks.
that's
So
right.
should be a good time. Uh, do you see this paragraph that starts with the word because?
Yes, I do.
Could you read that one?
Just that paragraph?
Hmm.
Okay. Because of their relationship with blood, roses seem often to have been regarded as symbols of mystical rebirth on battlefields where a number of heroes have been slain. Roses, or eglantines, will grow. Roses and anemones grew up from the blood of Adonis when the young god was dying. Human life, Mircea Eliade writes, must be completely lived out if it is to exhaust all its potentialities of creation and expression. If it is interrupted suddenly by violent death, it will tend to extend itself in some other form, plant, fruit, flower.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that in regards to this other
Hmm.
picture of JFK entering the White House. It's almost like he's walking on top of the flowers there. I mean, I think that's a pretty crazy image, the way that it's framed, as if he's like coming out of the flowers. It's a it's just another one of these very bizarre pictures of him in the garden. There aren't a lot of pictures just him hanging out in the rose garden. Although he did like a lot of press conferences and things like that. I think he gave some kind of medal to Alan Shepard and had some of the Mercury astronauts in there. Um, so I found that to be really interesting. There's also this expression or this verse from Ecclesiasticus or Sirach from some of the Apocrypha. I was exalted like a palm tree in Gadi, and as a rose plant in Jericho, as a fair olive tree in a pleasant field, and grew up as a plane tree by the water. So you can see even in the Bible, there are hints and allusions to the resurrection themes that are connected to the rose. Um, and perhaps Jordan, you could read where it has on that right hand side page where it started and has a mark for you to read. And it begins with
Sure.
weather.
Yes, also hard to ignore that the next entry is ruby. Maybe you were
Hmm.
going to comment
Yep.
on that
Yep.
later.
I am.
Whether white or red, roses were the favorite flowers of alchemists, who often entitled their treatise The Rosary of the Philosophers. White roses, like lilies, were linked to the white stone, the objective of the first stage of the work. While the red rose was associated with the red stone, the objective of the second stage. Most of these roses have 7 petals, each petal relating either to a metal or to an operation in the work. A blue rose was to become the symbol of the impossible.
All right. So this is huge, right? If roses are associated with alchemy, right? So this clearly brings to mind the Rosarium Philosophorum, which we've talked about in regards to Carl Jung's commentary. What I did not know is that the Rosarium of the Philosophers, a Rosary of the Philosophers, Rosarium Philosophorum, that actually means rose garden. I thought it meant like to pray a rosary or something. No, it actually means rose bushes or garden. So the fact that one of the most profound alchemical texts is associated with a rose garden, and JFK builds a rose garden, and roses are associated with the Roberto stage of alchemy, like this just kind of exploded my mind. We see down here an alchemical illustration, Rosa Rebea, with a man inside of this rose flask. I found this to be highly interesting. We'll look at it that deeper here in the next slide or two. But also, thinking about Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me, one of the first things that's done, if I remember the movie correctly, is that uh, certain cases or a certain case is identified as a blue rose case. And given all the paranormal things that happen in Twin Peaks, and knowing that Lynch is probably familiar with all this cinematic alchemy, that blue rose thing doesn't seem so cryptic to me now. If it seems to be a signifier of the impossible, that this is going into like the X-Files, that this is going into like the special investigation. I I feel like that resonates and is true. What do you think about all this, Ostic?
Yeah, I agree with that analysis of the blue rose. I mean, this image of JFK, this is one of the most interesting images of him I've seen, like
It's
all
crazy, isn't
throughout the
it?
presentations. Yeah, it's like he's being born out of those roses. It's like
Yeah.
that's and like it's like people talk about walking on a bed of roses or something like that. It's like he's walking on a bed of roses or something. It's like, oh, there was an old ring around the roses pocket full.
Yeah.
Okay, it might not fit here, but like this is something I love this image, and I'm excited to see what you're going to talk about with that guy in a rose flask. That's what I'm looking forward to, and I really
Yeah.
like all of these symbolism. This is good.
Yeah. I mean,
This is
like this is just like a random White House photographer. Like do they even know what they're taking pictures of? These are like, and I
they
mean,
get inspired. They have this divine spirit for that 1 second. It's like, I'm gonna click this,
it's almost like
and then they
God is
get it.
aiming their cameras. I don't want to take anything away from them, but I mean, why would you think when I look at this photo of JFK walking to the White House and the way that it's staged, like you said, it looks like he's being born out of a rose, which connects back to Adonis being born out of the myrrh tree. Do I really think a White House photographer understands the myth of Adonis? I don't. I really don't. Like, I follow some White House photographers and things like that on Twitter, and they're just kind of like regular people. It's kind of a Joe job. Like they try to be in the right place at the right time in case, something world historical happens. But I I don't I think I think it's accidental when they capture images like this by and large.
Yeah, I mean, if you've surrounded yourself with all these symbolisms, like if you build your house in that way, like I don't want to bring up that crude analogy with the Jeffrey Epstein house. It's like if you want to photograph anything inside, it's like, oh, this is that hanging from the ceiling or something. So it's like he has built, like Bunny Mellon has already built that bed of rose garden around it. So it's like it already evocative of all these myths playing out, and you just have to be in the right place at the right time to get a click, and suddenly you have an alchemical imagery without you even knowing that you have it.
Yeah.
You just simply were there. It's like already there. The alchemy and the temple is already there, and you're
Yep.
clicking it, but not knowing that it's a temple. It's like that. You're
Yeah.
like an atheist in a religious temple.
Well, that's an interesting question. Let's say, I mean, let's just because I mean that's what Gord Vidal said. He's like, oh, the Kennedys were excellent at myth making, right, and creating a whole mythology surrounding them. Are the archetypes such that, let's say, you intentionally put yourself in a position to be perceived as a certain archetypal figure or mythological figure? Should we be surprised that then mythological and archetypal things start happening to you? Is that how this works? Is that how the archetypal structure that undergirds the reality can actually be hacked into?
Maybe so. Yeah.
I don't know. If that's the case, I need to figure out what sort of archetypal figure I want to be, and just like, oh, I just got to wear this Merlin get up wherever I go, and then I'll start being able to do Merlin things.
Be careful there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the words of my most favorite tarot reader, at least when I was more into it, when I followed a lot, she always says, "I'm all the signs explicitive."
Well, Jung had to say that Merlin is Mercury, right?
Yes.
And then he has
Yes.
aspects of the devil, which I don't want to associate myself with.
Sure, but also we all have a shadow that our task is to alchemize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't go
Okay.
away by
Yeah.
ignoring it.
Are you sure? That's been my strategy. All right, let's go to the next slide.
The
Absolutely.
other, just 1 second, just one
Mhm.
point that you talked about it being rose coming from the word dew or rain. That's interesting as well. I mean, we have talked about these vegetation rituals, like it's like uh, people talking about rain and harvest and everything. So it's like it being connected to rain. I never thought about rose being connected to the dew or rain. So that's new for me as well. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
think
why.
that's in. I think that's
Pause
where I
here.
have that arrow pointed that I didn't read.
Yeah,
I had to think
I'll
about
read
that.
this page.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. I don't think I have much more to say than what I've already talked about here, but here's the Rosarian Philosophorum that Jung did his commentary on, and some of the manuscripts that are, or not the manuscripts, some of the illustrations that are part of that. I've got to go deeper into it, but yeah, I think I kind of already talked about this, so we can go further unless someone wants to say something about it. But this is where the Rosarian Philosophorum. I mean, this is kind of where I got the whole idea of the alchemical marriage occurring through the Apollo program. And so, oh, big surprise! You know, the exact manuscript that is telling us about the creation of the Philosopher's Stone would also be in a way manifested in the White House by the hand of JFK.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I feel like that makes it tighter.
Just want to say I'm so proud of us. A year and a half ago, we first looked at this book, Luke, and it made no sense.
Well,
A little sense. A little sense.
it
It
makes a
makes
little
more
sense now.
sense now. I'm not claiming I totally grok it today, but it does feel like a watermark of our growth.
I guess it's worth pursuing. I mean, did JFK know about the Rosarian Philosophorum? Do we have evidence that in the JFK library he just had like these alchemical texts lying around? He's like, and that's it's not that he went to Europe and he saw all these rose gardens and that's why he wanted to build it, but because he was steeped in this stuff and he wanted to bring it about as part of. I've never looked. I don't know what JFK's familiarity with Carl Jung would have been. You know, that's the thing is like I spend at least 40 hours a week working on this stuff, right? And I barely have a handle on it, right? And I'm not dumb, okay? Like these people have lives. Like he's going to the Corn Palace and being like, vote for me, right? Like, how does he have time to read these dense alchemical texts and like understand them and do everything else that the president's supposed to do? Like, where does the time for that happen?
Well, I can't say that it's the case for him, but if we had a real education on these aspects of this realm as a child, we wouldn't be playing catch up.
Well, let's look into where he went to school and what they were teaching at Harvard back in the day. Maybe it was alchemy was still being taught at Harvard in the
I think it's more on
40s.
the family level.
Yeah, I know. Which we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
Which
but also
again,
Harvard has all sorts of crazy stuff. I've been trying to get into the roots of theosophy, and so much of it is hosted on the Harvard website. It's interesting to me that these esoteric topics, that is the prime place to go.
isn't
What?
the Harvard mascot? Aren't they're I wanted to say they were associated with something crimson, but I guess they're a pilgrim.
I have no idea. I'll have to take your word for
But
that.
that's interesting because Kennedy did go to Harvard, right?
Mhm.
Or he has the Harvard, and I think one of their mascots is the crimson, which is interesting. That redness, that rubedo is there again. I think that's
Mhm.
worth looking into. It's worth looking into. All
Yeah.
right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as Jordan pointed out when we were looking at the Penguin Dictionary, the entry immediately after rose is ruby. Oh, okay. So roses are associated with JFK. It's connected to the rubedo stage of alchemy. Geez, does the name Ruby get associated with JFK at all? Oh, it does, because Jack Ruby is the one, right, who shoots Lee Harvey Oswald, right? So we've got, and his name is his name is Jack, just like JFK's name is Jack. So it's kind of like if I step back from it and I say Jack Ruby, like I'm just saying Jack Rubedo. Jack is the rubedo. Like if I step back, like there's all this red ruby symbolism circling JFK or Jack. And so if that's the case, and I've done several different permutations of this, and this feels a little bit more right to me, what I understand, because I said at the beginning, like my research has expanded from the Trinity test all the way up to the Artemis missions, which is present day, right? Which I've claimed that those, given the symbolism involved, I'm not sure those missions are going to be successful. But it would seem that the Trinity test is the Negretto aspect of these alchemical movements. Like really, we're looking at alchemy in the 20th century. And then clearly, because of the Ruby association with JFK, it's going to be the rubedo, right? Which is, from what I understand, is like the final stage before you make the Philosopher's Stone. And then I guess the moon landing itself would be the albedo. And then we get the Philosopher's Stone, which I'm calling the blue marble. And the moon landing would be this purifying albedo stage. Now, I was concerned about this because I was like, wait, these are chronologically out of order. It should go like Negretto, Albedo, Rubedo. That's how I think it should go. I am sounding like a freaking wizard now. I'm like boopity boppity booming over here, right? But from what I understand, it's not necessarily when you're doing alchemy, it's not like then this, and this. It's like you kind of put it into a cauldron. You kind of put it into a pot. Like when I'm making my casserole, when I'm making my quiche, I make a good crustless quiche. I'll give myself that credit. I don't, all the elements kind of have to get in there, but it's not like first eggs, then veggies, then cheese. Like as long as they all kind of get together and get put into the oven, I'm going to get my crustless quiche. I make it differently every single time and it tastes relatively the same. So that's kind of my understanding of what's going on here with these alchemical movements in the 20th century. They don't need to be in sequence.
Well, if causality isn't in play, and if time is not really linear, or at least it doesn't have to be, or at least not everything is beholden to that linear time, why would it have to go in order?
Yeah.
I mean, like even between these specific Negredo stages, there might be other stages like so we could have missed things. I mean, just that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything crazy.
Well,
But like,
sometimes there are 4 stages in alchemy. I guess there's one called citrinatus. It's a yellowing stage. So, yeah, there's probably other intermediary stages too. And if I look deeper into other alchemical texts, I'm sure that I find these transitional states too.
which one are you reading, by the way? Like, which one are you referring to? Referring this from? Negredo, Rubedo, Albedo.
Wikipedia.
And you gotta get your primary
I
sources.
I know. Okay. Let's look it up right now. You guys talk.
Oh, come on, that's the hardest thing.
No.
I mean, having to talk without having knowledge about these things. But yeah,
It
I
might be
mean,
the
Well,
Rosarium
I
of
think
the
you're.
philosopher.
it probably is. That's where that's
Let me just be sure.
where I don't believe that's where this image is from, but much of what we've discussed is based on
All right. If you care, and this is for and thank you, Ostic, for calling me out on it. Okay.
that.
All right. And Jordan, I'm going to put this in the chat just because I
Okay.
think it'd be help for us all to see what I'm seeing here. And again, this is AI, so I take it with a grain of salt.
Preliminary.
But here are the primary sources that we should be looking into. I guess I kind of got it from Jung and the Mysterium Conjunctionis and his psychology and alchemy stuff, but he's getting it from Zosimus of Panopolis from the 1st to 4th century AD, Splendor Aurora Consurgens, the 14th, 15th century, and of course the Rosarium Philosophorum. Also, Paracelsus is involved in this. So, to have a robust discussion of these things, you'd have to look at that. Are you able to pull it up, Jordan?
This is the next frontier.
Yes.
If you can get it on the screen there. Oh, you're looking at something else. Okay. I had it in the chat.
Well, this is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Is the magnum opus, so that's the term.
That's the term for the creating the Philosopher's Stone. Yeah.
Where does the term come from?
Oh, I'm saying that's creating the Philosopher's Stone is the magnum opus.
Got it. Yes. The original.
I have a lot of alchemical studying to do. I understand. I have to take shortcuts for right now.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to call you out or anything. I'm just
asking
no, you're good.
for my purpose.
Yeah, you're right too. Okay.
Like,
yeah.
I need to study it, so let me get the primary sources.
It's like I have to know everything. It's crazy.
It really is shaking out that way.
People spend their whole lives with it. Like Isaac Newton, he did this all his life. It's like it could be a practice like meditation. It's like you immerse yourself in that world, you observe few connections, then you get out of it. It's like, I think that's what it might actually feel reading it.
Ostic, when I die,
it activates your brain.
Ostic, when I die, you're gonna have to carry on this tradition.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's I give you Excalibur passes to you.
God damn it.
What if it did? How would you respond if I was like, that was my dying wish?
Man, that was. I mean, you should seek a more charismatic person for all of this. Like, you should seek the support of some viral YouTuber that would get your message across through all people in the country.
I'm not trying to get, I want the truth. I don't really have a message. But
yeah.
I want to point out.
We're still doing it, actually. I mean, someone else might get inspired.
The message is just to follow the example, because I'm still figuring so much out. If I had a message, it would be that. Is that more people adopt this sort of methodology.
Yeah.
Okay.
To your point, I'm still following Kubrick. We are still following in the steps of Kubrick. So yeah, I mean, we are doing what you're asking me to do already. So I think.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great. It's hard, man. When you're not here, it's hard on me. I realize I realize how much I'm reliant on you to um like my voice. We did one without you recently, and my voice was shredded. Like I couldn't keep going. My voice had just given out because I rely on you to speak.
Yeah. I mean, the topics you discuss, they're so out there, man. I mean, this is just insane stuff. I think I'm really humbled by it. Every time I see the things that you present, I'm like, oh wow, this is new. Like I would have never expected in my life to be encountering such material in this fashion. I'm like, wow, this is something else. This is something new.
It is
I think
something
it's
new.
pretty unique.
I think so too.
Like,
I think so too. I wouldn't be doing it if I felt like there were other people doing this, I wouldn't do it. Like I feel obligated to do it because I don't see it. But if like
yeah,
all of a sudden this became like the rage and like everybody was doing it, I'd probably be like, okay, cool, it's in good hands. I can, I
Do
can
something
do
else.
something else now.
yeah. I think
Mhm.
that was Kubrick's life mission as well, to like get this language into the culture, like whatever way he could,
Yeah.
like without sounding preachy or like
Yeah.
have plausible deniability.
No. Well, I, I am an imperfect messenger in that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Jordan, do you mind if we go to the next slide, or is there something you wanted to say about this still?
Oh, let's keep going because we don't have much time left.
Yeah, I'd like to get through the Marilyn Monroe stuff at least. So
Okay.
if we can get at least the next 3 slides done, I'll be happy. We have 13, 12 minutes. Okay. So what I wanted to raise here, I mentioned this earlier. Trump has paved over the green of the Rose Garden. A lot of people in America are really freaked out about that. His justification for it is that it it was not as hospitable as it could be when they're doing press conferences and pressers and things like that, because like women's shoes were sinking into the somewhat muddy grounds, and there might have been drainage issues. I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of liberals in America are freaked out about this because they think he's like ruining this sacred space. And you could make, given what we've talked about here today, they are more right than they understand. They're thinking about it just in terms of the beauty and its association with the White House and maybe JFK, but not thinking about it in terms of like a garden of Adonis, right? And then, like JFK, Trump they tried to assassinate Trump, but he survives, right? And he's also got this moon mission coming up, like the Apollo mission. Artemis is happening on his clock. And I've argued that not only because he survives his assassination and there isn't this soul harvest, I'm not confident because of this nomenclature involved with the machinery, this Orion capsule. I've said that it's a bad omen that Artemis's lover, Orion, is named after the capsule because he dies. So I think either the mission is probably not going to happen for that reason, and also it's not about the alchemical marriage because it doesn't involve the male element. Um, I just there's lots of reasons why I don't think this moon landing is going to happen. In addition, Trump puts his name on the Kennedy Center, which by many individuals is considered to be this ongoing memorial to JFK. So, like, what is going on here? Like, he's paving over the Rose Garden. He's attaching his name to the theater. Like the greatest achievement of JFK, the moon landing is. I don't like to make predictions, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's like delayed to 2028 or something now. Um, it's almost like it's
Yeah.
rewriting the JFK ritual or mythology, and it's like, well, is this going to undo the consciousness that was brought in via the blue marble? Because I don't think people really understand how much this changed the perception of reality. Like, what is happening here? Can that even be done? Can you bring a consciousness ritual to an end by paving over the garden, by redirecting the energy of the theater, by pretty much by not being able to achieve the moon landing? Of course, people are going to go, you know what? Those crazy conspiracy theorists that said it never happened, they're probably right. You know,
Oh
this
God.
it seems like it's going to negate whatever came out of the 60s.
This is such a valuable insight. I don't think I've ever seen anyone give it the way you did. But like, if you read the book Blood Meridian, it's all about this. It's like he's creating a counterfeit of the real. They are trying to create, it's like the same thing with the monoliths as the nuclear reactors. There's some real concrete truth to it, but they're trying to create some counterfeit to supplant it. To now this is our thing now. This is
Yeah.
my temple, and this means this. It's like, you know, you go to a pyramid and someone says like, no, this is like a Hindu temple. Some if like some it's like a cover story of all this. And like, he's counterfeiting all the achievements of the Kennedy administration, or all the alchemical power sources of that administration, of his memory and everything. So it's like, I think this is something that is being done consciously by the administration, or someone is whispering into his ear to tell him to like engage in such very strange activities. Now it's like, the thing that reminds me of is that in Blood Meridian, the guy who's the Judge Holden character, he's always creating counterfeits. He's like trying to, document the things as he sees them, and then, destroys the original ones. Like, he sees artifacts, he creates copies of them, and then he destroys the original ones and then moves on with them. So like, all of this reminds me of that. Is like destroying the memory of the old and replacing, like, keeping those power structures, but like harnessing their power for his own, like, mythology and memory, or like for posterity or something. It's a very, uh, I don't know what to call it. It's very farcical in a way, because people don't really buy him as that kind of leader as Kennedy was. I don't think
Right.
that, like, so it's very counterproductive in that sense. It's somewhat embarrassing. But yeah, let's see what
What do,
happens. It's
what do
a
you think,
very,
Jordan?
I can't figure out what the intention behind the spell is here. I can't figure out if it's to negate it, if it's to co-opt it. It's very strange to me. And these things are weirder, candidly, without this framework, without this context. Putting his name on the Kennedy Center just seemed very weird. It makes a lot more sense to me now. Cause like what's the point? You know? I I don't know what to make of it. And I think this is just a bigger mystery of this particular point in space time with this figure. What is the purpose of Trump? I don't know.
I mean,
There's
even his name, like
I
he's
know,
trumping.
trumping everything.
Yeah.
It does feel like a new game. We're re-rendering. And if you think about it from a gridding context, if you think about the White House, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here to say that Washington, D.C. and its monuments have been laid out for energetic purposes. I'm not the first person to say that. So this paving over Adonis's garden, this demolition of, is it the East Wing, this rearranging of the White House in multiple ways does change the energetic flow of Washington, D.C. And it really blew my mind visiting, seeing how small it is, right? And in my head, not growing up here, it seems like this place would be so much bigger than it is. So these specific changes, I think, do really abstract or morph or twist the energetic flow of whatever is happening. And it's just further punctuated for me, having walked past the Federal Reserve building in DC and seeing all the pentagrams all over it. These symbols are everywhere. And I think somebody knew what they were doing. Why would you do that?
You know what's funny is that when I like I really enjoy using Google Gemini AI, the LLM. It's become my favorite. I use 3 different AI to do my research every week. And it's become my go-to one. On this particular line of questioning, when I start to be like, I'm like when I'm like I'm seeing that this is canceling out the JFK mystique, and I think this doesn't bode well for Artemis, et cetera, et cetera. Multiple times, I think 3 different times I've interacted with it, it malfunctions, and it's the only time it's malfunctioned. Like it just goes cannot inappropriate inquiry or sorry, try back again later or something like that. And I'm like,
And
what?
you already ask some pretty weird stuff. It's not like this is the first thing in this vein of mythic mapping or symbolic analysis that you've done through it,
No, I
right?
use it. I use it hundreds of times each week, but it's this
It's fine with
one.
alchemy.
It's fine with everything else, but this one, it's doesn't like it, and it
Yeah.
breaks.
I don't know if this is good or bad. I don't know if this is light or dark or something in between and neither at all. But this covering up, it feels like an attempt to close some type of portal to rewrite something. We do loop through individually and collectively through different cycles until we're able to transmute and do something different. So the fact that he's coming in and living through a lot of these same cycles as JFK, but then doing the exact opposite does seem like an alignment with a completely different energy
Mm-hmm.
and timeline.
Yeah.
But I cannot say like it is to be revealed to me. Is this a positive or negative thing for light beings? I don't know. I don't know. I can't see the bigger narrative it fits into yet.
Yeah. I would say, given that the Marilyn Monroe stuff is pretty comprehensive, we should probably make this like our we should probably give our closing statements here because it's 1:48. I think it's too much to introduce with 2 minutes left. I feel satisfied. I really enjoyed this episode. So thank you guys so much. Um, I think I've exhausted everything I want to say. So if you two want to close it out.
I mean, just one question, like, what is the Gnostic worldview about it? It's like they talk about that it's a fake world that's supposed to teach us something, and there's a real world out there. So sometimes I'm thinking about him creating, like, paving over this world that already existed. It's like he's creating a fake world out of it,
Ooh,
like
I
a
like that.
smaller fake one.
Or maybe
The
demolishing
way,
that or maybe demolishing that fake world.
what is he demolishing? He's adding his own name to the already existing. It's
Uh,
not demolishing it.
well, I would say this. I mean, Trump is an agent of chaos, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
I mean, I, I went, I watched a little bit of a press conference this week. I mean, I understand why liberals hate him so much. Like he's not polished. He's, I guess you could see him as bumbling or something like that. But because he elicits such crazy reactions, so much of the mythology that we were taught in this matrix is just it's all coming undone, and not to mention it's being
Yeah.
perfectly timed with the dissemination of information. The entire American mythology is like exploding at the seams. Like none of these myths are working anymore. Like most people in the center or on the right of center are like challenging many of the sacred cows that we were taught to believe in.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty scary thing, actually. 'Cause-
only
But like,
if only if those sacred cows are actually sacred. You know, if they it was lies, then they need to come down, unless they're noble lies that are there to. And this gets into whole like Gnostic thing, right? Like, who are they there for? For the hylix, for the pneumatics, for the psychics, how we relate to the simulation is going to be different depending on our level of proximity to the divine.
Yeah.
This is where I have a big question mark. We are unmaking the myths, as you said. What they are going to be replaced with, I'm not super optimistic. I'm going to be really honest. But there is an opportunity that something more positive for humanity takes its place, but we're in the midst of a vacuum. And thinking about what Nietzsche said, what happens when you kill your gods? Well, we
Mhm.
are in this present moment, in a moment of destruction of our gods, of our myths. There will be a vacuum, and things are not going to be the same.
Well, Greece survived after
Mhm.
Socrates. Anyway, okay, we got to go.
Goodbye. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
This was really
Bye.
fun.